Hello and welcome everyone to another Power BI video. I'm Sumit from Nice Software Solutions, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to use variables in a DAX function. So here's the setup. I've got a slicer that shows a series of numbers generated by a DAX function. Let me show you where it's coming from. I've created this custom table called rank list using the generate series function. It returns me the series of numbers from 1 to 10 with an interval of 1. So I've used this column on the slicer. Now selecting a value from the slicer shows the top ranking product subcategories by total revenue value. If I select 3 from the slicer, the graph shows me the top 3 subcategories. Or if I select 4, it shows me the top 4 subcategories, and so on. I also have a card visual at the top which is used as a header that shows the subcategory names that qualify to be in the top ranking list. Now here's what I want to do. I want to show only up to 3 subcategory names in the header. If more than 3 are selected from the slicer, the header should show only the first 3 names and then append a text saying "and more." This way it'll take less space on the header. But right now, as I make my selection, the "and more" text is appearing fine, but the subcategory names keep getting appended and it doesn't stop at 3. So let me show you the DAX function I've used to populate these names. Whenever you're writing a DAX function, it's always recommended to make it properly formatted and reusable. This way, if you need to debug the code, you'll be able to take a step-by-step approach that makes the process easier. Since this code isn't properly formatted, let me show you an easy way to format it. I'll copy this code and go to www.daxformatter.com, paste the code and click on Format. It applies formatting on the code by adding proper indentations and all, which makes it more readable. Let me copy the formatted code and take it back to Power BI desktop. Now to debug this code, let me declare a few variables which would break the entire code into smaller pieces and see what each piece is returning me. This way I'll be able to pin down on the section that needs to be changed. I'll create a new measure called as list and then take a few pieces of the original code and set them as variables. I'll hit Shift Enter to add a new line in the DAX editor. I'll call the first variable as value selection that holds the selected value of the rank list table. Now I'll take the top end function from the first condition and put it in another variable. I'll call this variable as short table. This would return me all the subcategories as per the selection I've made in the slicer. I've not specified the rank number here. Instead, I've passed on the selected value of the rank list table as a variable. So you see how variables can help you to reuse a piece of code. Let me also create a variable called as long table that'll store the top end function of the second condition. Now as soon as I do this, I get struck with the realization that the top end functions in both the conditions are returning me the same thing. Probably that's the reason why the code wasn't working as per my expectations. But it was difficult to figure this out from that unformatted code. So I'll change the short table variable to show only the top 3 subcategories rather than using the value selection variable in it. Alright, it seems like I've already fixed the problem, but I'll continue to break this code further into smaller pieces. So let's add another variable called as short list, which would use the concatenate x function to append the list of subcategories returned by the short table variable and separate the values by comma. Similarly, I'll create the last variable called as long list, which would append the list of subcategories returned by the long table variable and separate the values by comma. All the required variables are in place now. So I'm going to type a return statement which can return any one of the variables that I've declared at the top. So first I'll return the value selection variable and see if it's returning me the selected value of the rank list table. As you can see, it does. Let me now return the short list variable, which is always supposed to return me the top 3 subcategories with the text appended at the end saying "and more." And even this is working fine. I'll also test the long list variable, which is supposed to return me all the subcategories as per the slicer selection. And this one is working fine as well. Now since all the variables are working fine, let me make the final change to the code. I'll add a function which says if the value selection is greater than 3, return me the short list, otherwise return me the long list. So let's test this code now. If I select 1 from the slicer, the card shows only the top 1 subcategory name. If I select 2, the card shows top 2 subcategory names separated by comma. If I select 3 from the slicer, the card shows top 3 subcategory names. And now comes the part that wasn't working earlier. So if I select 4 from the slicer, the card doesn't append any more names in the list. It rather shows the top 3 subcategories and appends the text at the end that says "and more." Now this is exactly what I wanted to achieve, but since the DAX function was a little complicated and earlier I didn't use any variables in it, it was getting a little difficult to debug the code and find out the area that needed to be fixed. So it's always recommended to use variables in a DAX function, which makes it more readable and manageable. DAX is a very strong function language anyways, but adding variables to it really takes it up to the next level and helps you to simplify many complicated reporting requirements. For any further queries, please reach out to us on the contact details flashing on your screen right now. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.